If you're running Google Ads, you know what CPC is. When it comes to CPC, there's also a heavy influence on CPA as well. In this video, what we're going to do is dive into CPC. Why can it be too high in your scenario? And then also what can you do to troubleshoot it, and then how that influences the actual CPA. So let's jump right in. First thing is really talking about how it influences the overall cost per click and what variables are within that world. So the first is going to be competitiveness. Now, Google is based off of an auction system. It might be common knowledge, but the way it works is pretty pure to that concept. The more people are willing to pay for a cost per click, the more Google is going to be willing to charge for the cost per click. So we've had clients in the loss space where cost per click could be $300, but because everyone's willing to pay that, because a case could make them $100,000, it all makes sense, right? We've also had clients in super unique niches where cost per click is 50 cents or $1, and there's not as many people in it. So generally, the industry you're in, and the more people who are willing to bid on a term, especially the more money it'll yield that person, the cost per click is going to be higher. So that's just to kind of give you an understanding of the overall premise of how CPC is calculated. There's not really a formula you can use to understand it. It's more of just the overarching theme that it's a auction system, and it's all scaled based off of what people will pay for it, and of course how much it's going to make in industry. So next thing is going to be quality score. This is going to be more unique to your actual situation. So quality score is based off of a couple things in the account. It's really going to be based off of the campaign you're running. Within that campaign, it's going to be the ads that you're using, the relevance of the ads to the keywords you're targeting, and then the keywords you're targeting to the traffic going to the assets you're using, which would be your website or landing page. Within all of that, and the calculations Google uses to determine quality score, which is highly based on relevancy, that's what's going to actually yield your quality score. Most of the time, you're aiming for a 8-ish out of 10. If you're like 7, 8, 9, you're in a pretty good spot. If you're lower than that, you're usually have some areas to work on. A lot of the times it might be your keywords and ads aren't super relevant to each other. Simply looking at what you're running and seeing what's combined or segmented will give you a really good understanding as far as what might be influencing that lower score. And then the last thing is bidding model. So bidding model is how you're also telling Google how you want to pay for traffic and what type of traffic you want to pay for. So if you're going after like max CPC, or not max CPC, sorry, maximize conversion value or maximize conversions, or even like a target CPA, you're telling Google that you want to pay for the best possible traffic within that keyword targeting, and that's going to make them charge you for more traffic on the CPC side. At the same point, it's usually going to yield more conversions. So high traffic isn't always the most important KPI to look at. It is important to diagnose why something might not be working or why you're not fitting within a cost per acquisition that you'd like. But if you have higher CPC, it might actually be getting the traffic that you need to cause a conversion. And you don't always want to optimize for like a lower CPC is what I'm trying to say. So all those things will definitely influence what your CPC is. On the quality score and bidding model side, those are things you have control of. Like I said, low CPC isn't always good traffic quality. Sometimes it's worth paying for better traffic, but to a certain extent, right? You want to make sure it fits into the profitability. So those are going to be the biggest influences. Next, kind of moving forward, is going to be influences CPA. Before we jump into these influences, I'll just explain CPA. CPA is cost per acquisition. So this is the cost of making your acquisition of a purchase or a lead conversion happen. And this is heavily influenced by CPC because let's say you have a 5% conversion rate. That means that for every 20 people that go to the website, it's going to give you one conversion. So when you have a $5 cost per click, if you need 20 people going to the website, that's $100 for that conversion, right? So that's how it's calculated. And then you of course have your conversion rate. This isn't something that you would learn until you've ran, some kind of paid marketing or organic marketing. It's going to be based off the current assets of your website. So if you're running Facebook ads or something else, you should be able to have a good understanding of what your assets are converting right at. If you don't have that yet, there's some industry standards, but really it's hard to tell what yours is going to be until you run stuff. If you're on the e-com side, your website might be at a 1% conversion rate if it's a decent conversion rate. If you're on a lead gen side, it could be anywhere from 5 to 20%. Generally, 5% is like a low average. If you're doing a common industry, it might be around 5%. But if you're going for very expensive traffic that's high intent and you're really bidding on the best possible traffic, you usually want to get it between 10 to 20%. So that's going to be really important. But going into the influences CPA, you can't really troubleshoot CPA until you troubleshoot the cost per click, or at least the quality of the traffic. And that's usually going to be the heaviest influence. And then it's going to come down to how your asset actually converts that traffic. So next is going to be troubleshooting. So You want to first troubleshoot based off the issue. And if you're trying to just fix things without understanding what's actually causing the issue, you're going to make things worse. You're going to possibly even change the thing that is working within that equation and not what's not. So the biggest thing is establishing the issue. There's two things that you really want to look at. One's going to be conversion rate, and then one's going to be CPC amount. The area that you're going to go after first will heavily depend on what's happening within those variables. So if you know you have a really consistent conversion rate on other channels, let's say on Facebook you're spending 10K a month and you know that the traffic that's qualified always converts at a certain rate, a lot of the times it could be the actual Google traffic that's happening. If you don't know, what your conversion rate is and you're starting with Google Ads as your first primary source of traffic, it could be also the traffic quality too, or it could be the website not being able to convert that quality traffic. And what you're going to look at there is you're going to go to your actual search terms in your account. And just to clarify, there's a difference between search terms and keyword targeting. Keyword targeting are the keywords you're actually targeting and telling Google you don't show for. Search terms are the terms people type into Google to actually show your ad. So search terms is the final level of truth of what your ad shows for. And sometimes depending on how you set up campaigns, if you're using broad match, you could have really low traffic quality. So generally you're going to want to look at your search term report first. And then if you have really qualified traffic coming through, then you're going to look at your CPC. And if the cost for the actual traffic is too much, you might be targeting traffic you can't necessarily afford for the cost per acquisition you need. If the CPC is really solid, the traffic quality is really solid, then it's going to be the actual conversion rate of your website. And you got to figure out what assets can be used to convert this traffic. And that makes it very clarifying as far as black and white, like where's the issue. So you want to go down that sequence of importance, like you can see on the slide. It's going to be traffic quality and then conversion rate and CPC. If you look at all of these in the right sequence, you'll be able to pinpoint exactly where the issue is, and then you can start reacting to that issue properly instead of just going crazy and trying to figure out what the issue is and changing random things, which is the worst thing you can do in paid advertising. Last thing is going to be recommended bidding models. So bidding models, like I've mentioned, heavily influence CPC because it's telling Google how you want to bid for traffic. Now, there's a couple main types. There's definitely more. We won't talk about too much because these are going to be the most common. There's going to be max conversions, which is telling Google, out of the traffic you're going after, I want to go after what's likely to get me the most amount of conversions. There's going to be target conversion value or target cost per acquisition, which is telling Google the amount you want to spend for conversion to happen or a certain amount of conversion, actually action or value to happen. And then there's going to be max CPC, which is telling Google the max amount you'd want to pay for a cost per click. And there's different use cases for each of these, definitely. Like I've recommended in other videos, we almost always start campaigns, especially for fresh clients, at the max conversion level because it's the perfect combo between telling Google you want to go after the most amount of conversions, but also not being too restrictive like a TCV or a TCPA. So target conversion value or target CPA is very strong, but after you have enough data to tell you where does that conversion happen at, because if you don't know that and you try to put that influence on it too soon, the campaign won't spend, it'll go after the wrong traffic and things of that nature. But long story short, each of those will tell Google at a different level how much you're willing to pay for traffic, how expensive of the traffic you want to go after. Let's say there's 100 people searching a certain term. Just because they're searching a certain term doesn't mean they all have the same value. There might be 20% of that people who Google has data on that never convert, and those are usually the types of traffic we want to avoid. They might know out of 30% of that traffic, people are likely to take an action or, so on. So just so you know, not all traffic is created equally, even if they're searching the same thing. You generally want to tell Google, I want to go after, of those 100 people, who's most likely to convert, and then make sure that Google will tailor that traffic to you. That way you're not going after just all traffic and paying, for cheap, crappy traffic, which can happen. Max CPC, like I said, is a little bit more use case scenario based. If you want to go after a wide spread of traffic and you're trying to expand on your impression share of certain traffic strands, then you can use something like max CPC and try to go after just even out all traffic. But like I've said in the past, always start with max conversion. It's going to give you the best data and the best bang for your buck for your money. And then the last thing is going to be bidding models per targeting. So with cold traffic and warm traffic, with cold traffic, you're almost always going to want to use something like max conversion because Google doesn't know exactly the conversion likeliness until your account gets data. If you have warm traffic, you can always assume that it's going to convert pretty well, like branded traffic, and that's where you can use something like max CPC or max traffic, whatever it is, and that'll get you as much traffic as possible. But with cold traffic, you want to make sure you're tailoring it to telling Google, I only want the best possible traffic out of that keyword volume, and then you get the best traffic to your website converted. So like I said, different use cases. Always recommend max conversion as a starting point. Then you can drill down to a TCPA or TCV. And then of course with warm traffic, you have a little bit more flexibility because you know it's going to convert at a higher rate. That's it for this video. If you have any questions, please throw them in the comment section. We'll make sure to get to them.